Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. We are looking at Dr. Shabir's approach to Islam, and I have with me Dr. Shabir, and now we are on the concluding segment. This is the very last part of this series. Unfortunately, Dr. Shabir, it's been very elucidating. And this series actually arose out of questions that people had. You comment on all sorts of issues, women's rights, prayer, all sorts of issues. And Dr. Shabir, some people say, well, where does Dr. Shabir come with these arguments? Like, how did they arise? He's so different from everybody else. So where did he get that idea from? So we thought it would be interesting to share your own personal approach to Islam. And that's how we've done it.
Yeah, and anyone can come up with anything. And of course, we're in a modern world in which people have the freedom. Some people can renege from Islam. They can reject the whole thing. Some people can disbelieve in the Quran and still claim that they are Muslims, and so on. So, when I give these new answers to old questions and people are surprised, naturally they want to know, like, is there a firm grounding for this? Is this really rooted in the Quran, in the life example of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and in Islamic tradition more generally?
Are you just pulling this out of a hat, or do you have a whole structure in your mind?
That's right. Yes. That's right. So I've tried to present that structure and to show that, yes, we all recognize that the Quran is of paramount importance. That's usually the number one source of Islamic jurisprudence, or what we think Islam is for all Muslims. And second to that, and close to that, we have shown to be the hadith, the reported sayings and actions and things that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, acquiesced in. This becomes a source for our thinking about Islamic law and about Islam more generally. And close to that as well, we have looked at Ijma, which is said to be consensus of Muslim scholars at least. And some restrict that only to the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And finally, we have talked about qiyas, which is analogical reasoning, and ijtihad more generally. And looking at all of these various sources of Islamic law and the way in which Islamic law is arrived at and answers to questions are derived, I've shown that though I may be giving different answers from what is widely and popularly known, nonetheless, I'm following a strict methodology that depends upon the Quran, that seeks authentic narratives from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, not necessarily what people call sahih, because that is a particular technical definition, but I look for what is genuinely a report from the Prophet, peace be upon him, in which case I would put on hold those sayings which should not reasonably be attributed to our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, either because it has a historical error or on reasonable grounds, it is very unlikely that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said something like that. And in terms of looking at Ijma, I've shown that the concept of Ijma was largely theoretical. And it did not actually happen, in fact, that all of the Muslims gather together, even if we say Muslim scholars gather together to make a singular pronouncement. It's usually it can be estimated that when somebody says there's an ijma on something, that there's a consensus on something, probably they mean that this is a dominant opinion among scholarly circles. But there could be many scholars who hold diverse opinions on the same question. So sometimes I would seek out one of these diverse opinions and see that has better proof behind it, better evidence. And sometimes I will come up with my own. But this is very rare, because often in Islamic history you will find a wide variety of opinions, and something was said by somebody already. And but sometimes we're dealing with issues which are so new, so different, so unimaginable from the past point of view, that you really have to come up with a new and innovative answer. And I find that the use of reason is very important in that regard. And the use of reason is not bad. It is actually Islamic, though some people tend to think it's either Islam or reason. But we have shown that there are many verses of the Quran which champion the use of reason, which not only encourage us, but imposes upon us to use reason. And without using reason, we will not be faithful to God in utilizing the gifts that He has given us. His hikmah or wisdom is a gift from God that we should apply in our thinking about what Islam really is.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Shabir, no scholar is infallible. So what do you think are the weaknesses in your approach?
Yeah, so weaknesses in the approach themselves, and I can talk about my own personal weaknesses as well. So as for the approach, one might say that, well, Dr. Shabir, if you go like this, then everybody will use their own reason, and everybody will come up with something different. And which one will be the true Islam? Should we listen to you or to the other guy who is using a reason to tell us what Islam is? So my response to that would be to say, well, listen to everyone and then evaluate, look at the evidence and proof behind what they're saying. Is it just reason that is unbridled and it is not connected with the Quran and the life example of the Prophet, peace be upon him? Did you just simply throw out everything from the Quran and everything from the life example of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and come up with your own newfangled thinking? Or is there a basis? Like, are you looking at verses of the Quran? Are you looking at the textual history? Are you looking at the context? Are you looking at the historical situation in which this was revealed to see why it was said that way? To see that our context is very different, and that's why it requires a different judgment or a different application. So we do have people out there who write books and they reject everything. They reject the Quran. They reject the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So if some people think that's the way to go because they already have that inner rejection themselves, then they might say, okay, I rally with that person. That person rejects it all, and that's my position too. I reject it all. So hooray, we got somebody. But if you are a faithful follower of the Quran and the life example of the Prophet, peace be upon him, then hopefully you will find that I'm trying to do that as well, even if I err along the way. But somebody else may do it better. Somebody may have a different answer than mine, but they're also faithfully trying to follow. So if that's what you discover, follow that person. Don't necessarily follow me. Now, as for my personal limitations, now I'm well aware that scholars in the past have thought about who qualifies to give verdicts about Islamic law or about, to answer questions about Islam at, some other than a lay level. Well, they would prescribe certain levels of learning, which I have not achieved. They will say, for example, the person must have memorized the entire Quran, which for many Muslims, this is a simple achievement. Many Muslim boys and girls have memorized the Quran at very early ages, sometimes 10 years old. It's not unusual in some villages in some parts of the Muslim world that many boys and girls have memorized the Quran at that early age.
Because in the end, it's one book, right?
Yes. And though I confess that I don't have even that qualification, though I aspire towards it, and I'm trying. And as for hadith, sometimes they say that you must have memorized 200,000 hadiths. And that's a very large number of hadiths. When you consider that the collection known as Sahih al-Bukhari contains some 7,000 hadiths. So if you go from 7,000 to 200,000, you're talking about hadiths which are now collected in massive collections, many different collections, including the one by Bukhari. So who would have memorized all of these even today? Or even in the past, it seems that this was some kind of exaggerated stipulation that was given, and nobody has actually had this kind of qualification, but God knows best. There could have been a rare individual, but it doesn't seem that it's reasonable to posit that this was widespread. But things of this nature, like if they say also the Arabic language, which is very important, one has to master the Arabic language in order to know the Quranic text inside out, know the hadiths of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and so on. So here too, I'm only a student of the language. What I can say in my defense, however, is that not so much to defend myself, but to defend the method and to defend the right to rethink some of the things in which Muslims are finding themselves in deep problems and they want solutions. So I'm trying to help those Muslims and myself as well. I myself want to have a faith which I find to be reasonable, understandable, and which I can confidently promote to the wider world. I can say to non-Muslims, look, this is a thing that makes sense. Why aren't you believing in it? Whereas some who take another approach, they almost come to the conclusion that this is not going to make sense to anybody, And so they don't bother to promote it to anybody else. And sometimes they even take the hard-nosed type of attitude of saying, you know what, they're going to hell anyway, so leave them alone. We just do what is right, and we'll go to heaven, and we're fine. So they don't need to explain this religion to anybody. They don't need to make it make sense to anybody else. To defend that right to make sense of our faith, I would say today, though memorizing the Quran is important, is not as important as in the past. Memorizing the Quran is good for two reasons. One, you can do a quick search in your own head in the absence of CD-ROMs and so on. And two, you are preserving, and this was the most important thing, you are preserving that text from corruption, so that if all of the written copies are burnt by the enemies, you still have it in the heads of so many Muslims, you can rewrite it in an instant, or however long it takes to write the 600 pages. So it's still important and still beneficial and still highly rewarding that one could be so devoted to the text to memorize it, because it takes some work. But now we can search the text easily online. We can find out how many verses mention a particular word, every place that the word is mentioned. And then we can simply cross-check our dictionary, see what those words mean, and so on. So the tools at our disposal are here, which were not available to our predecessors. Our pious predecessors may have known some things and not known some others. They could have known a lot of things but forgotten some at the time when it's needed for them to give a particular verdict. So the verdict might have been given based on partial information, as much as they could recall at the moment, or as much as they knew. So too with the hadith, and this is more important with reference to the hadith, because the hadiths are such a widespread in so many different collections that hardly anybody's going to know them all, and hardly anybody's going to have them all at their disposal at the moment in the past. But now we have software, we have programs which are downloadable for free, such as the Shamila program, that will give you all of the hadiths in an instant that mention a particular word, and so on. So then you can easily comb through, you can easily sift, you can compare and contrast, you can gather, you can form links very easily. So the study tools at our disposal are really helpful now for us to gather that information without memorizing them as the past scholars were required to do. And lastly, I should add that, Safiya, from where we stand, we benefit from the entire stream of our history, whereas the scholars from the past did not benefit from that stream. They cannot look ahead and see where the ummah is going, but we can look back and see where the ummah went. So it's almost like, let's say we are in we're in a parade, and the parade is going about, like it's passing through an alley between buildings. So we're in the middle of the parade. We can't see the beginning and the end. We can only talk to the people who are just immediately before us or after us. So that's all our knowledge. Like if we're asking, where is this parade heading? We can only talk to the people ahead of us and behind us. But let's say we're on the balcony looking down. We can see the beginning and the end. We can see where it started. We can see where it turned. And we can see where it is heading in the future, or what avenues are available for future possibilities. So we are standing on that balcony now. We're looking at the whole parade of the history of this nation called Muslim. We are seeing the whole ummah, all of its twists and turns, all of the splits, and all of the history behind it, and how people arrived at various positions, why they said what they said. So now, seeing all of this, we have a vantage point which is invaluable. And we cannot just throw away that vantage point. We'll be held responsible by God. Like, you can see that this is how the things went down. Why did you just follow it? Why did you go like sheep, following the whole parade, knowing that they're heading for a cliff where they're going to fall down to their destruction? Why did you not take a different turn? And you saw that the possibilities were there. You know that there were options. Why did you follow the way just like sheep? So some people might say, we are like sheep. Some people like to be like that. But most intellectuals are not going to go that route. And Muslims are called upon in the Quran to be intellectuals. Afala taqilun, do you not use your reason?
And the last thing, Dr. Shabir, is, of course, we are also limited in terms of what we see in the world, right? Just like the scholars of the past were limited, we also have limitations in terms of what's normal in our society.
Yes, yes. And of course, we,
So we
we
will
all
view
have.
the Quran and the Hadith in a way that reflects our understanding of what's good.
Yes, yes. And I should add to that, I mean, you're making a very good point here. So I want to say two things about that. One is that, even in our current time, there are various vantage points. So we might be standing on one balcony looking at it from one angle. Somebody may be standing at a different balcony looking at it from a different angle. We also have different lenses. You've mastered political science. That's your PhD work. Somebody else is schooled in a different subject matter. And people look at things from the lenses that they have. You've been trained to look at things in a particular way. Somebody has been trained to look at things from a different angle. So some will see it from the point of view of women's liberation. Some will see it from the point of view of the rights of the elderly, and so on. People have different vantage points and different lenses. So we will come up with different views on subjects, but it is important that we talk to each other and we have reasonable dialogue and we bring all of these views to the table so that we can arrive at our modern consensuses, right? So that's an important point. The other thing is that, yes, while we stand at a particular point in our history looking at the Ummah the way it got here, somebody 100 years later may look back at what we said and what we did and say that, that past generation did it all wrong. But and they will have the responsibility to shape the faith in a way that is responsible. To which, in a way that uses all of the faculties that God has given them to apply the faith in their time in a way such that when they show up before God on the Day of Judgment, they can say, yes, God, we did the best that we could. We didn't just simply follow the previous generations, we did what we could. Now, does that mean that because from their vantage point we are wrong, it means that we are wrong now? I don't think so. And I'm not saying that the scholars in the past were wrong then. But what I'm saying is that each generation has the responsibility to apply the faith in a way that makes sense at the time, that is reasonable, that is practical, that shows the beauty and the wisdom of the faith. And that's what they did in the past. They did it their way because that's what worked at the time. What they said was entirely reasonable at the time. And everybody saw that, and they saw the beauty, and that's why people rallied to Islam, and they became Muslim, and the Muslim empire grew. In our time, we have the same responsibility to show that Islam is a faith that is reasonable, full of wisdom, it is beauty, it is beautiful, it is practicable, and so on, even if it means doing something different than what our predecessors did. Because we will have to answer to God for what we did in our present time, given the circumstances. So they were right. Hopefully, we are also right by the grace of God. And the subsequent generation, even if they do something different than what we do, hopefully they will also be right by the grace of God.
So much to think about, Dr. Shabir. Thank you for sharing with us the theoretical underpinnings of your ideas. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Our videos reach people all over the world. We hope you will seize the opportunity to share in the reward from God. Please support us today.